Good morning, students. Welcome back to online session on programming for problem solving subject. In our previous session, we discussed the concepts of escape sequences, and then after we also discussed the identifiers and keywords. Okay, then we started the data types concept. So quickly I will go to that slide. So yeah, after the discussion of these comments, we discussed C's character set, and we said in character set of C we have letters, we have numbers, we have special characters, and we have white spaces. All these things we discussed. Then we discussed escape sequences. So what are escape sequences? With the help of special tokens these are some special tokens which are going to have some specific meaning when used in your programming code. Okay, and we also said these escape sequences generally used in order to format your output, whatever output you are getting on the output screen, in order to modify or in order to format, in order to alter that output, we use these escape sequences. Okay, so we have a list of escape sequences, and I told you very few we are going to use very few among these list. Okay, according to the requirement, according to the project development, according to the program development, we can use many of these. Then we discussed the concept of identifiers, and I told you that these identifiers, they are similar to your nouns. In natural language, in order to name the objects, real world objects, what we are doing, we are making use of the nouns, isn't it? We are naming those objects for our identification. So in that similar way, in your programming world, especially in C programming, in order to have the identification of these memory locations, because as we discussed, as we said, in every program we are going to do these four things, isn't it? The first thing, we are going to allocate the memory. We are going to allocate the memory for the values. Then second one, we are going to store the values in those memory locations. And the third one, we are going to manipulate the values according to the programming logic or according to the problem solving technique. And the fourth one is we will display that result. Whatever manipulations you are doing, whatever logic you are applying on the data, you will get some result, isn't it? You will get some result. That result we will output. Okay, that result we print on the output screen. So these four steps we do in almost all every C program. Okay, these four steps we follow in almost all every C program. And I told you, not only in C programming, but if you go to your C++, your Java, your Python, or any other programming language, we basically do these things only. And whatever programming languages we have in hand, all those programming languages, what they do, basically they do the computational job, isn't it? Basically they do the computational job, not the hard work, like how the people will do in real world. Okay, uh, yeah, all these things we discussed, and we said for framing these identifiers we have certain rules, isn't it? We have certain rules. Those rules also we discussed. See, we said the first character of your identifier is nothing but a name, isn't it? We are giving a name, and in order to frame that name, in order to frame that identifier, we have to follow certain rules. Not all names can be considered as identifiers. Okay, there are some rules before you take any identifier in your programming language or in your programming code. So for that, the first character must be an alphabet, and either it should be an alphabet or an underscore. And using underscore, again we have restrictions. Okay, that we are going to discuss in programming practices. They are not under rules. So what comes under rules means, if you violate the rule, you will get an error by the compiler. If you violate the rule, you will get an error by the compiler. And what is programming practice? In the sense, it is an understandability between the programming world. Okay, your compiler will not generate any error if you violate the programming practice. Okay, if you violate any programming practice, your compiler will not generate any sort of error. But if you violate these rules, whatever rules we are discussing, they are like conditions, they are like constraints. If you violate these rules, definitely your compiler will not accept such a thing and it will generate an error. So if you violate these four rules, your compiler will generate errors. The first rule, we said the first character of your identifier, it must be either a alphabet or a underscore. It should not be a numeric value. Okay, that is the first thing. And the second thing, it must contain only, we are in the second statement, we are not talking about the first character but all the characters, in your identifier. So it must consist of only alphabets, numericals and underscore. No other special character is allowed. So the first character, it must be an alphabet or a underscore. And the second rule, your all characters in your identifier, they must be either alphabets or numericals or underscore symbol. No other character is allowed. And the length of your identifier, how many characters you can take inside your identifier, in the sense up to 63 characters allowed. So if you take the 64th character, your compiler will omit that one. Your compiler will not consider that one. Okay, then it cannot be a keyword. So we discussed the concept of keywords, and you cannot use the keyword as an identifier. So these four are the rules, and apart from these rules, we have some programming practices. So these three are your programming practices, and if you violate any of these things, your compiler will not generate any error, but it will do the modification accordingly. Okay, your compiler will not generate any error. So the first thing what we said, the first character, it can be an underscore according to your rule, but over here we are saying it can't be. The reason, we said inside header files. So who are responsible for header files? The developers are responsible for header files. So inside header files, we have all the data elements or all the variables starting with underscore symbol only. All identifiers, all variable names, all function names, all array names, whatever they have taken inside the header file code, all those names, all those identifiers will start from underscore. So if you also take a variable name or an identifier starting with underscore symbol, then what will happen? There will be an ambiguity. There will be a confusion in between the already existing objects and the newly created local objects. So there will be an ambiguity, and it should not come. Okay, so to avoid such an ambiguity, to avoid such a confusion, what we are doing, simply we are not using the underscore symbol as the first character at all. And the second rule, your C language is case sensitive. Uppercase and lowercase letters are different. Okay, and the third one, no space is allowed between the identifier name. You're not supposed to give any space. Rather, what you can do, you can give the underscore, or you can do the capitalization concept. All these things we discussed in our previous session. So once again, I'm not repeating that one over here. So these three are our programming practices. Even if you violate these programming practices, your compiler will not generate any error. Rather, it will do the modification to your code accordingly. Okay. So next thing, we said keywords, they are the fixed words, reserved words, and they have some syntactical tokens associated with them, and they have some special meaning when used in your programming. So these keywords we can't use as identifiers. Already we discussed in the rules itself, rules of identifiers itself. Keywords can't be identifiers. Okay, so keywords, when we use, they are going to have some specific meaning. Okay, some specific meaning inside your programming code. Okay, so very carefully you have to frame these identifiers, and you can't use any of the keyword as your identifier. So simply what will happen, as it is having some special meaning, it will raise the exception, it will raise the error in your program code. Okay, so how many keywords we have in C language? We said 37 keywords they have listed. So the complete throughout the semester in the programming language, in this C language, we have to know the meaning and we have to know the functionality of these keywords only. So once you are good at all these keywords, that means 70 to 80% of job you have already done. Okay, if you are familiar with all these, whatever we are using over here, with all these keywords, assume that your 70 to 80% of understanding the C language job is over, almost over. Okay, the rest of 20% I have given to the logic framing, coding, and other stuff. Okay, so this is the major thing what we have in your C programming, and if you understand the purpose, the usage, the syntax, the meaning of all these things, it is I mean you will become like uh, you will complete the above average stuff, not an expert stuff, but an above average student. You will become an above average student in C language, I can say. Okay, so try to focus more on these things, and in one shot, as I said, in one shot we cannot discuss all these things, so we have to go slowly, and we have to take each one of these keyword, and we have to do the analysis, and we have to do the example programs on that one, so that you will become master in that one. Hopefully you understood. So quickly, after these keywords, we started the concept of data types. And data types, as I said, as we have different types of data in our surroundings, so whenever we want to use a particular type of data in our program, we have to tell the compiler that I am going to use so and so type of data in my program. Like if you want to use only numerical values, you have to tell the compiler to create a variable which is capable of storing numericals. And if you want to store the characters in your programming, then again you have to create a variable which stores the characters only. If you want to store numericals with precisions, okay, decimal values, in our regular terminology we call them as decimal values, numerical dot precision. Okay, yesterday I have explained this concept. Okay, if you want to store such value, then you have to create the variable accordingly. Okay, so generally whenever we are creating a memory location, you have to specify what type of data you are going to store in that particular memory location. It is very important thing. So basically, who will do the job for us? I mean, who will specify what type of data we are going to store inside the variables means these data types only. Okay, generally what these data types will do, they will tell the compiler that whatever variable you are creating, it is having some specific meaning, and it is going to hold only a specific type of data inside your program. Okay, suppose if you want to store integers only, numericals only, then create an integer variable. If you want to store characters only, then create a character variable. If you want to store precisions, then create a floating point variable. Okay, all these things in detail we discuss. So let us quickly see the definition of this data type. See, when we are separating these data items like numericals, characters, precisions, I mean floating point, when we are doing this type of separation, their operations also get separated, isn't it? Their operations are also going to be separated, because whatever operations you are performing on numericals, you can't expect those same operations to be performed on characters, isn't it? To be performed on strings, isn't it? So suppose if you have numericals performing the arithmetic operations like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, modular division, performing these type of operations, they are having some meaning, isn't it? We can perform addition on numericals, okay, because you will get a resultant value, and that resultant value you can use for a purpose, isn't it? But the same thing, performing arithmetic operations on characters, is it a meaningful job? No, it is not at all a meaningful job. We can't perform the addition, subtraction, multiplication on characters, that is nothing but English alphabets, and we can't expect the result from it, and we can't use that result in our day-to-day life, isn't it? So that is the reason why your data type not only specify the type of value that you are going to store, but also the type of operation you are going to perform. So read the first point. A type means, whenever I am saying type, it means data type only. Okay, a type is defined as a set of values and a set of operations. Not only the set of values, it will also tell what type of operations you are going to perform. Okay, so a type is defined as a set of values and a set of operations that can be applied on those values, So when you are declaring, when you are creating a variable in your program, at that time only your compiler will come to know that you are going to store so and so type of value in that variable, and you are going to perform so and so operations on that variable. See how important these data types are. Okay, so uh, yeah, the first point, it is clear for us. So then go to the second point. A type not only defines the type of data to be stored, but also the size of the storage location. So based on the type you're giving to a particular variable, it also tells the compiler how much memory to allocate. So now the data type is doing three things for us. The first one, it will tell the compiler what type of values we are going to store in that variable. The second one, what type of operations we are going to perform on those variables. And the third one, how much memory we have to allocate for those variables. These three things your data type will tell to the compiler when you are creating a variable. The first thing, type of values. Second thing, type of operations. The third thing, the memory size. How much memory we need in order to, just give me a second. Okay, so yeah, three things: what values we are storing, what operations we are performing, and how much memory location, how size we need. So these three things will be given by your data type itself. Will be given by your data type itself. So yeah, the example, if you see over here, a light switch. So simple example, a light switch. So whenever electric switch, if we see, it can be in any of the two states, isn't it? You can put either in either that switch in on state or in off state. Only two things, isn't it? There is no any intermediate state we have over here. It can be either in on state or in off state. There is no intermediate state over here, isn't it? So if we consider the values from that switch, you can consider on and off as our values, because in that scope, in that situation, we have only two possibilities. Okay, we have only two possibilities, so those two are our values. And what type of operations we can perform on an electric switch, just think of it. So either we can put the switch in on condition, that is turning the switch on, or switch on, switch off. Only two types of operations we can perform. It is having on and off as values, and switch on, switch off as operations. Okay, switch on, switch off as operations. So that is the thing. So next, yeah, if you see the different, yeah, I have already told you so many types, so many things about these types. Now we see the actual categorization, how these types are categorized in our C programming. That we have to see now. So yeah, I think that you have deleted that slide. So quickly go here. Okay. So in C, the types are divided into four broad categories, four major categories. Okay, the first one, void type. Then we have integral, floating point, and derived type. So if you see the representation with the help of a diagram over here, I have shown that one. So C types, they broadly categorized into four: void, integral, floating point, and finally the derived type. So over here in our discussion, whatever data type discussion we are doing, our discussion will be mainly on the first three types. Okay, it will be mainly on the first three types. What are those? Okay, the void type we discuss, this one, then the integral type we discuss, then floating point type. We are not going to discuss the derived type. So derived types are nothing but our arrays. Okay, our what do we call, pointers, arrays, pointers, structures. All these are some of the advanced concepts. So these arrays we discuss in second unit, pointers fourth unit, structures fourth and fifth unit likewise. Okay, so likewise we discuss. So these concepts are your derived types. So derived types are nothing but, why we are calling them as derived type means because by taking the basis of these general types like void, integral and floating point, we are creating this derived type. So derived type, they are not independent. They are dependent on these integral, void and floating point. So that is the reason we are deriving these derived types from this primitive types. So these three we call them as primitive. Void, integral and floating point, we call them as primitive types. And this last one, we are calling it as derived type. So these, why we have given the name derived type means because they are dependent on primitive types. They are not directly created. By making use of these primitive types we have created, so they are derived from primitive types. That is the reason why we are calling them as derived types. Hopefully you understood. So let us quickly go. Yeah, here already I wrote that statement. The first three types are known as primitive types or basic types, which are independently defined. And the last type is derived type, which are derived from basic types or primitive types. That is the reason why we are calling them as derived types. So the two statements I have written over here, you can read them and you can get the concept. Okay, so if you see the integral types, they are further divided into Boolean, character and integer. So integral types, they are further divided into three types: Boolean, character and integer. Your floating point type, they in turn divided into real, imaginary and complex. Real type, imaginary type and complex type. Okay, so mostly out of all these types, mostly we use this void type, Boolean type, uh, character type, integer type, and inside these we discussed only the real types. The imaginary and complex in scientific applications we use, in experimental applications we use, and we have a discussion on these things, but we rarely use in our programming. Okay, they are not going to ask anything related to associated to these imaginary and complex numbers, because as you know, these imaginary and complex numbers, they are too advanced, and at this stage of learning, so generally right now what we are doing, we are studying or we are learning C language. So at learning stage, if we start discussing this imaginary and complex type, because they comes under at research level, but you are now at the beginning stage. You are the beginners right now. So at beginners stage, we can't discuss such advanced concepts, such complex concepts in our discussion. So you will get confused if I explain all these things to you. You will get confused, and moreover, this imaginary and complex numbers, complex data types, they are not there in our syllabus as well. So just to have a complete picture on these data types, I have taken these two things also in our consideration. But if you see the actual book that is prescribed by your university, if you go and if you see, they are discussing up to real data types only. They are not going for imaginary and complex. Okay, so we discussed accordingly. We have a discussion only on void types, Boolean types, character types, integers and floating point. Imaginary and complex also we do discuss, but we are not going to use in our programming. Okay, and derived types, as I have listed over there, like arrays, pointers and structures, unions, files, all these are derived types. Those things we discuss in our further concepts, in our further units. Okay, so quickly we go and we see what exactly is a void type. See, in our programming, when we write code to solve our problem statement, our real-time problem, so there comes situations where we have to tell the compiler that we don't need anything from the operation that we are performing, or we don't need anything from what we call from the task or from the process, whatever we are initiating. So at such points, at such things, we use this void type simply to indicate nothing. Void means what? If you see the physics definition of void means nothing. Okay, nothing. Void area or void point we are going to have in our physics, isn't it? Generally, when we go to this astronomy, so we said after the space we are having complete void. So space, what it is? Space, the atmosphere. Till what extent we have our Earth atmosphere, we call it as the space. And after that we have complete void. Void means nothing. There is nothing in that area. Okay, so the keyword void is also used to indicate nothing, void type. Okay, so yes, see this void, when we are writing void, when you are writing these things, it is something like an identifier, isn't it? But it is not an identifier, rather it is a keyword. Void is a keyword. Just go and see in your keywords list, we do have void over here. See, here we have the void. So now we are learning this keyword void. So here we have void, if you can see. Okay, the void keyword. So now we are studying about this void keyword. So out of 37 keywords, we are getting the meaning, we are getting the syntax, and we are getting the usage of this void now in this session itself. So likewise, we discussed many of these keywords. Yeah, quickly go and see the void type. So say, as I said, whenever we are writing a program or whenever we are writing certain code in our program, so every piece of code, it will expect some input, and it will process that input and gives the output. So there are situations, if you want to tell the compiler that you don't want to give any input, simply you want to get the output by performing some operations, you want to get the output. Moreover, you are not giving any input. So how you will tell the compiler that you are not giving any input? Means will make that input place as void. So we'll make that input area as void. So by reading that void, the compiler will understand that you are not giving any input, because void means nothing, no input. So same thing, if you don't want to get any output from an operation, if you don't want to receive any output from an operation, at that point also we'll do the same thing. Simply the output area what we are going to have, near that area, what we do? We make it as void. We make it as void. So by reading that void, the compiler will understand that from that operation, it has to return nothing. It has to return nothing. So likewise, in order to guide the compiler that in our programming, in some places, we don't want any input, we don't want any output, or we don't want any operation to be performed, we don't want to pass any value. So we don't want to store any value. For such things to indicate, we use this void type. Void means nothing, no operation, no values. Okay, no operations, no values. And how we do that means by using a keyword called void, V-O-I-D. Whenever you come across such a situation, whenever you want to tell the compiler that you don't want to store any values, you don't want to perform any operations, simply use the keyword void at that place. Use the keyword void at that place. In our programming, you will use almost all, in every program you are going to use this void. Over there you will understand the purpose of this void. Okay, so the keyword void is used to indicate the void type in our programming. The void type has, as just now I said, no values, no operations. A void type is having no values and no operation. The void type is used to specify that a function has either no parameters or no return values. Just now I said a function means nothing but an operation in your program. A specific operation in your program, we call it as a function. So that function, if you don't want to give any parameters are nothing but input. See, all these are programming terminologies. Very soon you are going to make yourself familiar with these things. Okay, so a function is nothing but it is a piece of code, or it is a small operation. It is a piece of code or a small operation in your program, a function. Then what are parameters? Parameters are nothing but input to those operations. Input to those operations. And what are return values? Return values are nothing but output from the operations. Output from the operation. See, the void type is used to specify that a function is nothing but an operation, a small operation, has either no input. Parameters are nothing but input. Has either no input or no return values. Return values are nothing but output. So now read the definition like this. The void type is used to specify that a function, that is nothing but that an operation has either no input or no output. Okay, any of these two things you can do, or both the things also you can do. Okay, so example, int main void. See, this main is a operation. This main is a function in our programming. Main is a function in our programming, and here we have written int and here we have written void. So this area is input area. This area within the parenthesis, whatever you specify, that area is nothing but input to the function. Whatever input we want to give to this function, from this area only we will give. Then what is this int? In the sense, this is your output. This is your output. Now by reading this statement int main void, your compiler will understand that the operation main, this is, as I said, this main is nothing but your function. Okay, this main is nothing but your function, or in our terminology we can call it as an operation. We can call it as an operation. So main is an operation, or main is a function which is taking no input but giving output of type integer. It is taking no input but giving output of type integer. Like that, you remember. Very soon we are going to change the terminology. When we become familiar with these things, we will change the terminology. But for now, for your understanding, you can remember whatever I am giving like this only. You can remember like this only. See, directly from nowhere to the advanced level, if I take you, you will get confused. So that's why what I'm doing, I'm slowly I'm trying to feed the stuff to you people. So you are completely a newbie to this programming. Okay, so if I'm teaching data structures, or if I'm teaching Java, means I'm not going to stress this much, and I'm not going to use these many examples, these many technical stuff, this much of elaboration, I mean to say. But as you people are newbies to this programming world, I have to be very cautious. I have to take many precautions before feeding any kind of thing to you people. Because everything, every class is a surprise to you people. I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. Every class is a surprise to you people, because in every class we are discussing some new concepts only. And believe me, till the end of this semester, you are going to see this type of thing only. So the only thing where you people can make yourself comfortable, in the sense, you have to do the practice. With practice only you will become comfortable with this programming world. Otherwise, believe me, not only in this semester, upcoming semester is going to be a hell to you people if you're not going to do the practice. Because in upcoming semesters, here we are studying only PPS, but when it comes to your third semester, there you study a lot of programming languages. Okay, like your ACS lab, we have Python. Your DSA lab, you have data structures. Your DSA subjects, you have data structure. Your principles of programming languages, there we have this programming concept, programming syntaxes, everything. So if you are good at C programming, means definitely you are going, everything is going to be an familiar kind of stuff to you people, and easy stuff for you people in upcoming semesters. If you got stuck up over here, believe me, you are going to struggle a lot in your upcoming semesters. Okay, so void type to indicate no values and no operations. There is another important usage of this void type, to create a generic pointer. Okay, to create a pointer to generic type. When we start the pointers concept, there we will study more about it. So pointer to generic type. Simply remember, the second use of this void type is to create a generic pointer. See, for your first meets, or for your till the point we start this pointers concept, if at all I ask you anything related to this void type in your assignments or in your assessment, in your internals, simply write these two usages. The first usage is to indicate, to tell the compiler that a particular variable or a particular operation is having no values and no operations. So simply to indicate that, we are using void type. And the second use is to create the generic pointer. What is this generic pointer? How it is going to help us in our programming? All those things we study when we do pointers concept in our programming. Okay, so till that point you remember it is simply used to create a generic pointer. Okay, so the the second type of data types, they are integral types. Integral types in C language, we have three different types of integral types. So they are boolean type, character type, and integer type. Boolean type, character type, and integer type. Integral types does not hold the fractional part. They are the whole numbers. They are the whole numbers. They are not going to hold any fractional part. They're not going to hold any fractional part. They are the whole numbers. So in C language, how many different types of integers we have? Integrals we have three types of integrals. The first one, boolean type, character type, and integer type. Boolean type, character type, integer type, and they are the whole numbers. They are not going to hold any fractional part. Okay, so let us see one by one what are boolean types, what are integer types, and what are character types. The first type is the boolean type. So the C language boolean type, it is included only in C99. So already we have seen the development, the history of C programming, and we stopped at C99 itself, isn't it? First we were having ALGOL, then BCPL, then B language, then C language. We called it as the first version of C, we called it as the traditional C. Then we have C89, then C95, then C99. So this Boolean values concept or Boolean type concept, it is included in C99. Prior to C99, there is no such type, Boolean type. And it is named after a French mathematician and philosopher. His name is Georges Boole. Okay, so he's a French mathematician and philosopher. So a Boolean value, it has only two types of values. It will take only two types of values. Either it will take true or it will take false. There is no other possible value that we can store inside a Boolean type of variables. Okay, it will take only two types of values. Either it can be a true value or it can be a false value. So as we said, this Boolean type concept, it has been introduced in C99. Then prior to C99, how these values stored, I mean how Boolean values stored means these Boolean values prior to C99 stored using your normal integer type of variables only. Okay, normal integer type of variables only. And to indicate a positive as well as a negative state, generally they are going to use a positive to indicate a true value. A positive or a negative number can be used. Okay, if you are using either a positive or a negative number, that is a non-zero number, so that non-zero number will indicate a true state. Okay, a non-zero number will indicate a true state and a zero indicates a false state. So hopefully you know, because many of you people, you already did this thing in your secondary schooling or at your intermediate level also. This truth tables we are going to have, isn't it? To indicate the logical operations, we are using truth tables. Just now I told you the electric switch concept. The electric switch, it can be in any of the two states. Either it can be in on state or it can be on off state. So using that simple logic only, a new machine language is introduced, and we call that language as binary language, because your binary language, it can be in it can use only two alphabets, isn't it? Either 0 or 1. So 0 indicates the off state of the switch and 1 indicates the on state of the switch. Using this simple concept only, they have developed a complete computers concept. Okay, what is the basis, what is the initiating point of these computers means that electrical switch only. Okay, so like that you can remember. And before C99 there was no Boolean type, so to indicate this Boolean value in our programming, they used integers, and a non-zero number, whether it is positive or negative, indicates a true state, and a zero number, that is that indicates a false state. Okay, true state to indicate a non-zero number we have to use, and a zero to indicate a false state we have to use. And moreover, to use this boolean type in our programming, we use the keyword bool, B-O-O-L. Okay, we use the keyword bool in order to declare a variable of type boolean. Okay, so this is something. And next we have a boolean type is stored in memory as 0 or 1. Okay, now as this type was introduced from C99, it is having some specific values. It is having some specific values associated with it. So now instead of non-zero and zero numbers, we are making now we have a specification: 0 to indicate the false state and 1 to indicate the true state. So likewise, 0 to indicate the false state, 1 to indicate the true state, no other values. Okay, so like this you can remember. Then we have the character type. So after void boolean, now we are discussing about character type. It is also an integral type category only. Integral type category only. Yes. So we discussed C's character set, isn't it? We discussed C's character set, and all the characters, whatever we discussed in that C's character set, they fall under this character type values. They fall under this character type of values. So in a computer, a character is nothing but it is a value which represent in computer's alphabet. Okay, in computer's alphabet. So whatever characters we have on the keyboard, and I mean whatever combinations of key we can use, and whatever graphical symbols we can generate in our computer, all those symbols, all those things will fall under the character types. Okay, they fall under the character type of values. So in C standard, there are two different types of character types. Again, these character types, they are divided. One is the normal character, CHAR. It is also a keyword. And another one is wide character. Okay, one is the normal CHAR character, and other one is the wide character set. Okay, character, wide character set. WCHAR underscore T. So these two keywords we are using in order to create a character type of variable. Okay, to indicate character type of data in our programming. So the first type, if you see, this character type we use many of the times, and this wide character, again it is an experimental level type. So we are not going to use this wide character. We are going to use the regular character only to create a character type of variable. Okay, so if you create a normal type of, see, void, we said no values, no operations, so no memory it is going to allocate, void type. But whereas this character type, when we are discussing, it is going to allocate some amount of memory for your variable to store the value. So some amount, that some amount, how many bytes means 1 byte of memory. Okay, for your character type, how many bytes? 1 byte of memory we are allocating. Okay. So 1 byte is nothing but it is 8 bits. Already you know this one. Okay, 8 bits, and 256 different combinations of characters we can have with that 1 byte of memory. Okay, 256 different possible characters we can have with that 1 byte of memory. And in wide character set, if you are declaring a wide character set, it will consume 2 bytes, and it is going to have some wide range of characters to support non-English characters as well, like your Arabic characters, your German, Hebrew, all those characters to support. We are going for wide character set, and that at an experimental level, at an research level we set. So all those characters we don't need in our regular way of programming. So we do not discuss that wide character set, and we are considering that wide character set as an experiment level job. Okay, experiment level job. So we are not doing that over here. Okay, so for a regular character variable, 1 byte of memory will be allocated. It is 8 bits and 256 different possibilities we get. So 256 different combinations we can store into that 1 byte of memory. Okay, it is an advanced level of concept when it comes to your basic electronics, when it comes to your digital electronics. There you will understand how 8 bits will give you 256 different combinations. Okay, 8 bits will give you 256 different combinations. There you will study. Okay, in English, letter A, how we are representing letter A. in English. So generally the letter A, it is a graphical notation. Like this we are writing A. So to write B, like this we are writing B. Okay, to X, like this we are writing X. All these are having some graphical symbols associated with it. So we as a human being, we are having some intellectual power, isn't it? Intellectual power, some visualization ability. So by seeing this A only, we are saying it as A. By seeing this B, we are saying it as B. X, likewise we are naming it. Likewise we are pronouncing it. But a computer, as it is not having any intellectual power, what it will do with these letters means whatever data associated with these graphical symbols we are storing into the computer, with that storage data only, it will recognize this A, B, C, D, X, Z, all those things. It will not see the association of these graphical notations. Like A, the association is like this. In this way we have to write. B, in this way we have to write. X, in this way we have to write. Your computer will not understand by seeing the association of these graphical symbols. Rather, what it will see means their associated binary equivalents. Their associated binary equivalents, because it will store only binary values. Your computer will store only binary values. It is not going to store any other thing. So to give A, to make the computer understand A, can we give A directly? No, we can't. We have to give the binary equivalent of A. So that binary equivalent for A is this one. See, over here they have written. Okay, the binary equivalent in 8 bits for A letter is this one. So you have to give this much thing, this entire thing to the computer. But are we doing like that in our programming? No, we are not doing. Then who will do that for us? Your compiler will do it for us. What we do, we give A only to the compiler. Like this we give A inside single quotations. How we give A as a character to the computer means A inside single quotations we give. Like this we give. Now, these its associated binary value here we have seen just now. Its associated binary value is 0110 triple zeros 1. 0110 triple zeros 1. This is the binary equivalent of A. Then who is doing this conversion from graphical A to the binary A? Your compiler is doing. We are not doing. Your compiler is responsible for converting the high level language instructions into machine level language instructions. So he is doing that job for us. But remember, your computer will understand A like this only. It will not understand A like this. We human beings will understand A like this. But your computer will understand A like this. Not only for A, for all the characters, whatever we have in your C's character set. Every character is having its associated ASCII value and its associated binary equivalent value. And those binary equivalent values only your computer will understand. No other values it is going to understand. So for X, we have this value. See over here I have written. For X, what value we have? This 0111 1000. Likewise. This is the binary equivalent for X. So the decimal values of these two letters. So these binary equivalents will also have the decimal equivalents. So 97 and 120. We call them as ASCII values. Okay. They are all some advanced concepts. So we call them as ASCII. ASCII ASCII values. Okay. ASCII values. These are binary values, binary equivalents, and these are ASCII equivalents. These are binary equivalents and these are ASCII equivalents, and these are English letters, isn't it? These are English letters. Likewise, you have to remember English letters, ASCII notations, binary equivalents. So all these things you have to remember. So the next thing, yeah. A wide character set, already I told you, to support non-English language characters or languages that does not have the Roman alphabet, we use the wide character set. And as I have shown over here, the character is the smaller one and the wide character, it is the bigger one. So wide characters we are using at experiment level. Already I told you where we are using. At experiment level we are using this wide character set, but for our programming, in our programming we are using these characters only. Okay. Then we have integers. So let me just see how much time. Yeah, it is almost like 49 minutes. Still 10 more minutes we have. So we try to complete these integers. Then signed and unsigned integers also we complete. Then floating points and other things we will see in our next class. So integers. An integer type is a numerical value, a number without a precision. To store the whole number into a variable, we create integers. Okay, we create integer variables. If you have a whole number without any precision to store that value, what we have to do? We have to go for integer variables, integer data types. Okay, so C, it is supporting 4 different types of integers. Again, based on the size and based on the memory allocation. Okay, these integer types, they have been categorized into 4. The first one, short int, then int, then long int, and long int. Likewise. The first type of integer what we have? The short integer. Then we have integer. Then we have long integer, and finally the long integer. So likewise, we have 4 different types of integers in our programming. Short int, long int, and long int. Okay. Yeah, to have a clear understanding in our programming, instead of writing short int, you can only write short. We can call it as simply short. Short in the sense short int only. Okay, short in the sense short int only. See how many keywords we have completed so far. So far we have completed, just go to the keywords. Already we completed this what we call void. Then we have also completed this character, char. We discussed to create a character variable, we are using character. Then we have also, now we are discussing what? We are discussing int, and we are also discussing long, and we also discussing int, long, short. Where is short? Somewhere here only. Yeah, here. Short also we are discussing. And boolean type also we have discussed, right? This bool also we discussed, boolean type, isn't it? So these many things we are just discussed, and still many to discuss, isn't it? Still many to discuss. So yeah, here, so integer types, depending upon the values they take and depending upon the size your compiler will allocate, they have been categorized into 4. The short integer, long integer, and long integer. So just for our simplicity, we can call the short integer as short, normal integer int only, and long integer as long, and long integer as long. We simply remove that int in every of the category. Okay, in every category we simply remove that int. So short integer we only call it as short, long integer we only call it as long, and long integer we call it as simply long. Okay, so these data types are organized from smallest to the largest as shown in the following figure. So just go here and see this figure. So this size of what it is a way to get the allocated memory. So when you are creating, when you are creating a short variable, how much memory it is going to consume in your computer, how much memory it is going to consume, that to see we use this size of operator. This size of operator is helpful in knowing the size allocated to this particular variable, allocated to this particular type of variable. So same thing for integer, how much memory it will allocate, long, how much memory it will consume, long, how much memory it will take from the computer memory. So just to know, we are using this size of. So as I have shown here, the symbols in between, see the less than symbols I have shown over here, and here also the less than symbols I have shown. So what they are indicating over here. So whatever memory the short variable is taking, it is lesser than integer variable. So integer variable's memory is lesser than long variable. Long variable's memory is lesser than long variable. Likewise, we have the understanding. Okay. To know the size of any data type, C provides the size of operator. C provides the size of operator that gives the exact size in number of bytes. How much memory the compiler is allocating for a particular type of variable or a particular type simply to know that one, we can make use of this size of operator. Size of followed by parenthesis. In between parenthesis, we have to put that size name. We have to put the size name. So if it is short variable, okay, if it is a short variable, it will take 2 bytes. So as you can see over here, it will take 2 bytes, short variable. Integer and long integer, they both will take 4 bytes, and long integer, it will take 8 bytes. Long integer, it will take 8 bytes. 2 bytes, 4 bytes, 4 bytes, and 8 bytes. So like this, they will consume the memory from your computer. Okay. So what values you can store into a short variable, what values you can store into an integer variable, and what values you can store into a long variable, in the sense there is a range of values from minus 32,768 to plus 32,767. These many, I mean, in between we are going to have the 0, isn't it? So if you have the number sequence like this, so negative values will come this side, isn't it? Minus 32,768, and positive values will come this side, 32,767. And where that one is less means, as it is including 0 also. 0 also one count, isn't it? So to include that 0, it is been reduced from the positive side. It is been reduced from the positive side. So all the values between minus 32,000 to plus 32,000, this much you can store into an integer variable. So there is a lot to discuss about these integer types, and we do it in your lab. Okay, in your lab, when you come for practice, we do it. So because even if I give, and if you don't do those things practically, you will listen and you will forget. Okay, you will listen and you will forget. So simply by doing practically, you will remember all these things permanently into your minds. So as I said, short integer, it is taking 2 bytes. Integer, it is taking 4 bytes. Long integer, 4 bytes. Long integer, 8 bytes. And they are also having some specific range of values that you can store into that variables. Okay. So this is, I have shown. So as the memory is increasing, the range is also increased from short to long. Here short, as it is taking, see, I have shown the pyramid also over here, the size pyramid also over here. The short integer, it is taking less memory. Integer, it is taking more. Long integer, some more. Long integer, more and more. So likewise. So as the size increasing, the range will also increase. Okay. So likewise, then signed and unsigned integers. So integer they can be either signed integers or unsigned integers. So whatever range we are having now, we are having range, positive range as well as negative range, isn't it? We are having positive range and negative range. So if you want only positive numbers to be stored, then you can go with signed integers. Okay, then you can go with signed integers only. And if you want positive as well as negative, then you can go with, if you want only positive numbers, you have to go for unsigned. If you want positive as well as negative, you have to go with signed. Okay, the concept is very simple. Integers can be signed as well as unsigned. Signed means, so what is this signed and unsigned concept means? See, whenever we are writing a number, a particular number, whenever we are writing a particular number, let us say I'm writing over here 24. I'm writing 24. So this 24, whether it is positive or negative, because we have an understanding in mathematics that only if it is negative, we give the negative sign. If it is positive, we don't give any sign, isn't it? If it is positive, we don't give any sign. But for a computer, you always have to tell whether you are storing a positive number or a negative number. So by default, whatever variables you create, or by default, whatever values you store, they will be considered as positive numbers only. They will be considered as signed integers, and they will be considered as positive integers. Okay. So for this signed integers, to represent the negative values, you have to put minus sign. Okay. Okay. There is another type of variable category in integers, that is unsigned variable category. So unsigned means all numbers, they are positive only. There is no concept of negative numbers. There is no concept of negative numbers. If you are creating an unsigned variable, you can store only positive numbers into that one. That is the reason why the negative numbers range will also join with the positive numbers range, and the range will get increased. So here, for signed integers, we have what? For signed short, we are having 32,768 to 32,767, isn't it? But for a unsigned short, you will have the doubled range. Unsigned short, you will have the doubled range. That is 64,000 something you will get. 65,000 something you will get. Okay. All these concepts, the signed and unsigned, in detail we'll discuss in our next discussion. So just to have a clarity, I have given some overview over here. Okay. So just go through these concepts, whatever we discussed once again, so that it will help you in our programming as well. Okay. Thank you very much, students.